Last time we summarized this table, you can see over to the left, we summarized the distribution of model into a frequency table, and today we're going to look at how to create a bar graph of model. We're going to do this in Statcrunch, but basically what's going to happen when we do this this bar graph, the x-axis of your bar graph are going to be the categories of your categorical variable. This is the values that are in that table. And over here are going to be the count, or the number of rows, or the number of cars that were in each of these categories. And so over here we're going to see the count or the percent, which can also be called the frequency or relative frequency. We copied our data table in here. I also copied the frequency table in here, and I removed the total from it. I'm going to show you in Statcrunch how to create this bar graph if you have data and if you have a frequency table. So for the data, if I just have the data, I would click on Graph Bar Plot with Data. And when I click with data, it's going to count how many rows are in each category. So when I click on model and hit compute, it creates this bar graph for me. Now I can do the same thing using the frequency table. So sometimes in the homework, they may just give you a frequency table and you need to create a bar graph. So I'm going to do graph, bar plot. This time I would say summary. And I'm going to say, well, where are my categories? That's in this model 2. But I have to tell it the count. See, it's not I can't count the rows. There's only one row per category. So I have to tell it that this other column, that's my count. So I go over here and I say my counts are in frequency, or I could have used relative frequency. That would have been fine too. And I hit compute and I get the identical graph. Size these so they look about the same. And you can see the graph, these are identical. It's the same exact graph. Cool. All right, I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to get rid of this so I'm not confused. So we'll just work with this guy over here. So I have this frequency table. Another thing, remember I told you the y-axis can be count or percent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another one. Graph bar plot with data, and I'm going to pick my model. But instead of my type being a frequency table, I'm going to click on this and I'm going to click percent. And that is going to put the percent on my y-axis instead of the frequency. So let's size this so they're about the same. And you can see again, if I look from right to left, it's identical again. The way the graph looks is exactly the same, except for the scale. The scale for the y-axis. The scale over here is percent. The scale here is frequency. Now these are identical because percent and frequency are proportional to each other. So let's get back to our notes here. This has to do with this rule called the area principle. And basically, bar graphs should follow this principle. And the principle is that the areas and the bars, these shaded areas, all right, they must be, or should be, they are proportional to the distribution of the variable. And recall distribution, that is the count or percent. So this whole frequency table over here is the distribution of model. So Avalon 1, CRZ 2, Camry 7, Prius 10. And what does proportional mean? A list of values is proportional to another if you get from one list. So if I get from frequency to the other list, which is percent, by multiplying or dividing each number by the same thing. And that's how I got from frequency to percent. So the values 1, 2, 7, and 10 are proportional to 5%, 10%, 35, and 50%. Right? Because the way we got from those, to get from 1, 2, 7, and 10, we divided by 20 and then multiplied by 100%. Here, the second graph looks different than the one that I just did, and that is because this is reordered. This is ordered from the largest count to the smallest count. And that's one of those other options that we can do. And this last one, this only has 2 categories in it. So both of those things I can do in Statcrunch. So let's say I take this one, and if I want to change an existing graph, I can click on this options edit, and it will take me back to my options. So one of the things it says order by, so it's ordering by value, which means the value of model. So it's alphabetical, value ascending. All right. So now we're going to do it by count. We're going to do it by descending, so that I go largest to smallest. So by clicking on count descending, I get this graph. So what I got to do here is I can choose options, edit, and that gives me these options again. And so I could choose just by typing in this where the model is Camry or model equals Prius. Now you don't have to do that, but I just wanted to show you that it can be done. So now you can see here are the counts for Camry and Prius. And then it looks like this. And that's fine. I can just only list a couple of categories if I desire. All right, so let's ask a couple questions. According to the bar graph, or you can look at any of these bar graphs, what frequency of cars are either a Camry or a Prius? So if I look over here, the Camry, that looks like it's a count of 7. And I look at Prius, and it looks like a count of 10. Now, I already know what those values are from my table, but so if I add those together, then I would say 17 cars, 17 of the 20 cars are either a Camry or a Prius. All right, so what about the percentage of cars that are an Avalon or a CRV? So here's percent, and you can see this one looks like about 10%. And the Avalon, that's about 5%. So I add those together. So 15% of the cars are either an Avalon or a CRV.